week 4 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few plays I look to sell and trade this week. The first guy, Raheem Mostert of the Miami Dolphins. So far, Mostert, he's been one of the best running backs in fantasy football, no doubt about it, the first 3 weeks of the season. Week 1 at the Chargers, 10 carries, 37 yards, a touchdown, 2 catches, 13 yards. Week 2 at the Patriots, 18 carries, 121 rush yards, 2 touchdowns. And week 3 versus the Broncos, 13 carries, 82 yards, 3 touchdowns, 7 catches, 60 yards, and a receiving touchdown in that one. So right now, Mostert, he's gone off the last 2 ball games with monster ball games. This Miami Dolphin offense is obviously a dynamic offense, but I just don't see it holding up here for Raheem Mostert, especially with his injury-plagued career, and also with Devon Achane now, who's going to eat into that workload. I don't think Achane's going to come off 232 yards from scrimmage and not see, obviously, the field here for this Miami Dolphin team and 4 touchdowns. So right now, with his injury concerns throughout his career, Achane having a monster ball game in week 3, I think Raheem Mostert's a sell-high candidate. And right now, you could get a good wide receiver in a deal. A guy who's struggling, who's off to a slow start, or someone who's very needy at the running back position after we've seen a lot of injuries, obviously, in the early going with Nick Chubb out for the season, J.K. Dobbins out for the year as well. Cam Akers traded away from his team. Saquon Barkley banged up. So with all the injuries and teams needing running backs badly, this is a perfect time to sell Mostert because I just don't see him keeping it up this season. Next guy's Deebo Samuel of the San Francisco 49ers. So Deebo Samuel had a breakout game in week 3 for this Niner team. But once again, he's banged up with a rib injury, and that's another thing with Samuel, just like Mostert. Injuries have been a big part of his career, but when Samuel plays, we know he's a solid fantasy option. Week 1 at the Steelers, 5 catches, 55 yards, 8 rush yards. Week 2 at the Rams, 5 carries, 38 yards of rushing touchdown, 6 catches, 63 yards. In week 3 versus the Giants, 6 catches, 129 receiving yards, and a touchdown. And he took a lick, like I said, with the rib injury, but he does have 10 days to heal. He did from that Thursday night game here to Sunday versus the Arizona Cardinals. But like I said, Deebo Samuel's been an injury-prone player throughout his career. Now coming off of 2 good ball games, and now with the injury to the ribs here, I don't know if he's going to hold up 100%. This is still a run-first type offense, I believe, built around Christian McCaffrey, even though Brock Purdy's been one of the better quarterbacks in all pro football over the last year. So right now, while Samuel's playing good football and he's not 100% injured all the way here, before he gets injured, this is a perfect time, I believe, for fantasy owners to sell him this week. As Zach Moss of the Indianapolis Colts. So Zach Moss, he's been the starting running back now the last 2 games after missing week 1 with injury, and he's had 2 monster performances. Week 2 at the Houston Texans, 18 carries, 88 yards, a touchdown, added 4 catches, 19 yards. In week 3 at the Ravens, a monster 30-carry workload, 122 rush yards, 2 catches, 23 yards, and a touchdown. So right now, we know Jonathan Taylor's out at least 1 more week here for this Indianapolis Colts team. But at this rate, I don't see it holding up here for Zach Moss. I know he's getting an insane amount of volume coming off a 30-carry game, and in week 2, playing 56 out of the 57 snaps for this Indianapolis Colts team. And I know week 4 is a pretty good matchup versus the Rams, with Jonathan Taylor looming, coming back sooner than later, even though we definitely could see Jonathan Taylor possibly traded, obviously, from this Colts team. But also Zach Moss, who's never really been a lead back over there in Buffalo. He's been more of a split guy, and I know they really don't have anyone else. They got Trey Sermon over there and Funk on this roster, but right now, I don't see him holding up for Zach Moss. He pretty much was a player not drafted in any fantasy leagues, and the opportunity and workload is there right now. But if you could get a good deal for Zach Moss, for a more proven player and a guy who's just struggling right now out of the gate but could get going, this would be the time to do it. And like I said, running back's a position that many fantasy owners need, and I think you get good value for Moss this week. Next play is Sam Laporta of the Detroit Lions. So Laporta, it's been a nice rookie season in the first 3 games of his career here for Laporta, and he's been one of the best tight ends in terms of fantasy points this season. Week 1 at Kansas City, 5 catches, 39 yards. Week 2 versus Seattle, 5 catches, 63 yards. And week 3 versus the Falcons, 8 catches, 84 yards, and found the end zone on 11 targets. So right now, Laporta playing great football. We know tight end's a pretty weak position where there's only pretty much 3 or 4 great players at the position. Obviously, Kelsey, Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson, and if you want to put Kittle, Darren Waller in there, you can. But right now, Sam Laporta, he's amongst the league leaders in fantasy points at the position, but I don't know if it's going to be sustainable here for Laporta as the season goes on. I know right now he's pretty much like that number 2 option in the offense, either him or Josh Reynolds, but when Jameson Williams comes back, that's going to be more targets lost for him. Jahmyr Gibbs, I think we're going to see them working more into the passing game as well, even though he didn't do much in week 3 in terms of catching the football. So right now, Laporta is playing great football, and if you're a team that needs a running back and someone wants to make a deal for a tight end here, that's the type of deal I would go for. Laporta for one of these running backs that are a fringe type of player. So right now, he's definitely a player I would sell high, even though he's playing good football. And I'm not saying to sell these guys just for anything, but if you could get good value or someone overpays, this would be the time to do it while they're at peak value. In my opinion, the next player is Jerome Ford of the Cleveland Browns. So Ford filling in for Nick Chubb now, who's out for the season with the injury, even though I think Kareem Hunt is going to get a lot of looks as well in the backfield. And we even saw Elijah Moore in week 3 get a few carries as well in the backfield. So Jerome Ford, his usage wasn't great in that ball game, only 12 touches, and he did end up with 19.10 fantasy points in PPR leagues. 10 carries, 18 yards, which obviously is a horrible yards per carry, not even a yard a carry with a touchdown. 2 catches, 33 yards, and a touchdown. So right now, Jerome Ford, obviously the touchdown saved his fantasy day, and he's got another tough matchup here coming up in week 4 versus the Baltimore Ravens. They give up the 5th least amount of fantasy points to running backs. Even though we just saw them give up 122 yards on the ground to Zach Moss, I still think it's going to be tough sledding here for Jerome Ford. His yards per carry haven't been good, and the last week I know he had 16 carries for 106 yards, but 69 of those yards were on 1 carry. So right now, Ford, while he's playing good football, and obviously was the hottest pickup of the week with the Chubb injury out for the season, this is a time to sell him high because I don't think the workload is going to be there. I think it's going to be a pass-first type of offense where they're just going to run the football with a few different guys, I believe, is this Cleveland Brown team to make defenses play honest. And right now, while Ford's coming off of 2 great ball games, like I mentioned, he's definitely a sell-high guy, and we know a lot of teams need running backs this season. Next guy's Keenan Allen, the Los Angeles Chargers. So the only way I'm selling Keenan Allen high, obviously, if I could get a 2-for-1 deal right now for Allen, because the last 2 weeks here, he's been a man on a mission, is Keenan Allen. After last season, he missed 7 ball games. So on the season, a monster year so far. Week 1 versus Miami, 6 catches, 76 yards. Week 2 at Tennessee, 8 catches, 111 yards, and 2 touchdowns, which was a monster game, obviously, with 32 fantasy points. And then he took it to another level in week 3. Here was Keenan Allen at Minnesota in that ball game, and a whopping 18 catches, 215 receiving yards, and a 49-yard passing touchdown. So right now, Keenan Allen, what a ball game it was here for him. Over 50 fantasy points. And right now, when a guy comes off a 50-point burger at a position, he's a sell-high guy. Right now, if you could get 2 players, like I mentioned, in a deal, especially if you're a team 0-3, 1-2, and you're struggling, obviously, and you need players to fill out positions, this is a perfect time to sell Keenan Allen. I know he's one of the best possession wide receivers in the league. I know he puts up monster fantasy points year in and year out, but the only thing with Keenan Allen, he's been an injury prone. He's been an injury prone player as well throughout his career. But right now, while he's playing good football and he's played like a man possessed over the last 2 weeks, combined in 90 fantasy points, this is a perfect time to sell him high while he's at crazy value, and you could ask a lot for him in a deal. And the final player I look to sell and trade this week's Alexander Mattison of the Minnesota Vikings. Alexander Mattison, I don't think it's going to be much of his backfield anymore over there in Minnesota. We saw them trade for Cam Akers last week. Obviously, he was a healthy scratch in week 3. He's got to learn the playbook and stuff over there in Minnesota. But they didn't just trade for Cam Akers for him to sit on the bench or be a guy that's only going to get 5 to 8 carries per game. So Alexander Madison's been struggling this season, and he's been a touchdown-dependent running back for the most part, besides in week 3 where he actually carved out 20 carries, 93 yards, 5 catches, 32 yards. And I know he's got a good matchup here week 4 at the Carolina Panthers that just got torched by Kenneth Walker and that Seattle Seahawks game. But like I said, Cam Akers is over there in that Minnesota backfield. They're a pass-first type of team as well. And even Chandler, he's been working in as well on and off in this backfield. So right now, while Alexander Madison's coming off a 17.5 fantasy game points-wise here, he's a perfect sell-high running back. And like I said, a lot of people need running backs. They'll give you a good wide receiver, I believe, in a deal, especially if they really have nothing in that backfield. So right now, while Madison's coming off a double-digit game And with all the factors I mentioned, Minnesota being a pass-first team with Jefferson, Hockenson, and Addison, and also Cam Akers going there in a deal last week, this is a time to sell them. So that's a few plays I look to sell and trade here for week 4 of the fantasy football season.